Welcome to the Unreasonable Life podcast. This is where we get to redefine what's possible and inspire you to create a life that is extraordinary. I'm Dr. Nona Javid, an entrepreneur, an author, a quantum leap teacher, and founder of Elevate Club and 1 Week a Month Mastermind, a professional life liver, and your guide to living boldly. Every episode, I'll sit down with an incredible guest who has shattered limits, pursued their biggest dreams, and created lives that others have called impossible. Together, we're going to uncover the stories, the strategies, the lessons that will empower you to live your version of that unreasonable dream life. Because the life that you want isn't unreachable. It just happens to be unreasonable. Let's dive in. Hi, Tessa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Likewise, I couldn't wait. I know we've talked before in the past, but coming on here and talking about all the things, I couldn't wait to connect again. So it's great.
Same. It sounded like we had some similar stories in motherhood and entrepreneurship. So I was definitely looking forward to having you on here. So speaking of stories, let's dive in. What is your story, Tessa? What's your unreasonable life story?
It is. It's how much time do we have? It's funny because we all have our stories and our walks of life, and I can start at so many different stages depending on who I feel like needs what, and because it's the connection and the hardships that really connect us all. So we can take it all the way back. Human child doing all the things, having a pretty picture perfect life, living with my family, my parents, my brother and sister. I'm the eldest. And then all of a sudden, my world kind of imploded when I lost my father at the age 12. He died in a boating accident suddenly and tragically. And he was kind of our, lighthouse and our person that we went to. And so that was a pretty big dynamic shift that as a 12-year-old go through. And then you journey on further, and we lost my younger brother in a car accident at 17. So it's been sort of, when we talk about journeys and we take it back, there's been some definitely transformative, parts of mine, which I share openly and with vulnerability because it's a dynamic of how my life has been impacted and how I've shifted and shaped and made choices to honor what's happened and sit with them, and then also continue to take agency of my life. So yeah, that was just the start.
I didn't know any of that. I'm sorry to hear. And it's interesting how many really powerful I think transformative coaches and people of influence, like real influence and real wisdom. It's incredible how many of them have experienced really, really big losses, and especially at childhood. My journey, I forget if I shared this with you on the podcast, also started at 2.5 when I lost my brother. And I think
I just know that.
something about loss at
Right.
that level at a young age that I think it completely shifts your timeline. So what was it for you like? Like how did the loss of your father and then again losing your your brother, but I think probably specifically starting with your dad, like what was that like, and how did that influence you as a person in what you do, how you lived your life, the relationships you've picked, what role has that played?
Oh, sure. It's interesting because the way that I see it when I reflect back on that, the life, it was almost as if we were living in this beautiful glass globe, right? Where I still have the opportunity to not be impacted as much with the heavier stuff as a child, right? I'm allowed to just be in a sense. And then a hammer hit it and the water spilled out and reality came creeping at a very young age. And I felt that I I give myself so much beautiful grace. And I say to myself, you could properly handle this. And wow, at 12, in a sense that you handled it the best ability that you could at that time with what you had. And I am so incredibly proud of you. So I think about that all the time because I wasn't equipped. At that point in time, the only reality that you have is the true reality now that at any point in life, something that you love beyond life itself can be taken from you. And that's your only reality in the and life is fragile and you're starting to deal with these big um just thoughts that life is fragile and this can happen and wait a second, I don't know. And you don't necessarily at that time have people around you being like, let's talk about this and let's come in. And I have a mother who's also trying to deal with this tragedy in her own way, and I've got two younger siblings, and I'm not sitting there being like, let's contemplate the feelings that we have going on right now. Just trying to understand all these big things, and it was quite scary. But I put one foot. I found that I needed to, and I didn't even realize it then, but it was being of service to others that saw me through that because it got me outside of myself, right? The feelings weren't then allowed to overwhelm me all the time, just was when I felt I was in a safe spot, like in my bedroom by myself or in the shower crying, or where I wasn't overwhelming anybody else with those feelings, yet I could feel them in peace. But to be of service to helping my brother get dressed in the morning because he was 4, or helping my sister get ready, or making sure lunches were packed, or, Mom, you good? And that was the consideration that continued to happen for my life. So to be somebody who was then almost to a point of exhaustion, filling other people's cups became the way that I operated. And as you asked, also started to operate in relationships. So I do identify with an archetype of a healer and of somebody who holds, when these things happen to you as a child, it can overwhelm you and you can find yourself lost for quite a period of time. But there's options there. And sometimes it breaks you open so much that you become so empathetic and compassionate to other people's feelings that you almost develop this hypersensitivity. And it's a superpower in a way, but you have to understand the dynamic of it because it can very much overwhelm you and you could pour so much out of yourself. So that was my relationship status pretty much up until, my mid-30s, where people felt so good and never wanted to let me go because they, you hold so much pain. I'm like, but I'm exhausted and I can't do this. And you don't want to hurt anybody. And yeah, it was an interesting dynamic.
Wow, that's, Tessa, very similar to what I have experienced. So I know exactly what you're talking about. When I was 2.5, I lost my brother. It's the earliest childhood memory that I have, where my dad sort of lifted me up in the hospital and showed me where my little brother was. And I'm so excited and brought him the gifts. And I remember the smell of the hospital. I remember the feel of it. And then, of course, he never made it home. He passed away in the hospital due to medical complications. But I remember watching my mom struggle. I remember watching my mom cry. I remember taking her like shoes or like her slippers when she was crying in the kitchen. So sort of became my coping mechanism was to become the fixer, to become the healer, sort of how you beautifully described too, is it was in service to others. And that has been the thread along the way. And then moving on into my first marriage, when I got married, I was the overgiver. I was like, this is my person, this is what I do. Let me fix you. I see all of your potential. You could be happy. You could have all of these things, do all of these things. And so yeah, that's a common story, whether starts with a loss or not. I think a lot of women experience that, and mid-30s to late 30s is really a time of transition. The more I talk to people, the more I realize that's when we kind of sit with ourselves and we're like, wait a second, what have I been doing? How have I been betraying myself in some ways in a in a way, like, and masking it with like, I am helping people,
Right.
having that gain of I'm the one that's helping people. And so for me, it was like in my entire business and I'm curious to hear yours too, how that played along. Where I was helping hundreds of people on weekly basis, and then my husband, and then my children, and then I completely burnt out.
It's so true. And I think about that dynamic period of time in your 30s. And it's funny because I told somebody not recently, it's like I'm 41 and I was like, I just became an adult. I feel like and sometimes I was like, I now officially like I feel really good as an adult. And it's okay to say that and joke around because we're evolving through this whole journey. And I was talking to another girlfriend and she was like, are you and I gonna be dancing in the streets when we're 60? Is that what we're gonna be doing? And I was like, darn right, we're gonna be doing that at what do you mean at 60? Yes. Yes, so we're doing that, and she's so funny because I texted her the other day. I was like, "And maybe jumping in fountains too. We'll see." Because she's definitely a, soulmate of mine. I love her dearly, but think back at, in your 30s and how I like to think of a tree. You're a sapling and you're growing and you're planted and your roots are growing and you're getting steadier and steadier. And you get to those 30s and your roots have gotten steadier, but you're unsure of where you're growing to, where the branches are going to go out and what you look like. And you're a little, insecure and life has taken this shape, but you maybe want to go this way. Give yourself the grace because you're exactly right. I think that's so true for all of us. And with the relationships, goodness, you said it so beautifully. And I was just contemplating this earlier this week. What we see in people is a gift. We see a connection of our capital S self to theirs. We see the parts of them, but we have this ability to see it without the trauma, without any of what comes into play, what stops them, what stalls them, habits, right? We can strip those and we can think to ourselves, this is a habit that they're replaying. I see, I was in a relationship with addiction. I was like, I see that addiction as being a disease. I can separate from it. I can have compassion for you and hold you. But what I had to realize is I couldn't fix. Right. I can't fix. And that was a beautiful period of my time. So hard. So hard. Where a codependency, had formed, where identification crises, I didn't know labels. I thought that's who I was. And if I'm not the wife, who am I? And, if I'm not the one holding all the balls in the air, who am I? If I'm not this role at this job, who am I? And everything had to fall away where I was laid completely bare. And I had to rebuild from there and I tell everybody on the phone yet again, that is a superpower that you can see that within people. What a gift you give them because they see themselves through your eyes. But you also need to realize that allowing them to see that you need to have limitations to it, right? That doesn't mean you get in the next relationship with the person that you see could be everything that they could be. You see their full essence and what they're perfectly capable of because you see it in yourself, right? But that doesn't mean that that's the person for you. You can see that and you can have friendships with them. You can be acquaintances with them. And if they are not at a place to have those growth-minded conversations with you, if they're not doing the work of themselves, you can see that all day long, but they're never going to be at that place potentially with you. And that's where we get into a difficult situation, right?
Yeah. And I think the recognition of I am wanting to inspire, say, my ex-husband or my patients or my clients or my friends or everybody really in my life. Instead of me holding the burden of inspiration, I think I discovered, and sadly to say, in my late 30s, after a massive burnout, that I'm not here to inspire because that was a lot of push. I am here to be an inspiration. So to be an inspiration required me to tap in and go internal and figure out what are the things that I need to heal? What are the things, how do I need to do things differently to get to my next level? What are some things that I've covered up and shoved under the rug that I need to uncover? And from those healings, I have had way more impact on. I still have the desire to help people, but the burden does not come with that. It's more like this is I'm the place of inspiration. So in my energetic field, here is what inspiration looks like. Now, if that is a resonance with you, then you come along. And I think that was a really big micro distinction, if that makes sense. Like,
Totally. Totally. You can only meet people where they are in their journey. You can't. And that's the truth. So while you are working with a client or talking, building a new friendship, new connection, going into a new relationship in the early stages, ask them about that. What do you see it in them through those early, phases, but do temperature checks, and you know how to do it without conducting an interview or being tongue in cheek. Do it in a gentle, fun way because you're passionate about it, and see where they are on their journey. You can only be relationships are 50-50. They have to be. You have to be able to meet someone very closely to where you are in the process of taking care of yourself, working on yourself. And the right person is going to see that and be like, I love the way that you care for yourself. That is so attractive to me, right? I love that you are busy doing this. It's funny. I shared a picture with people the other day and I was like, took myself on a date and did a sound healing and yoga yesterday. I was like, love doing this for myself. Those kind of things. What you're going to find is if you're in a situation, minded a friendship, work relationship, or relationship, where you have had to compromise the things that allow you to connect and be that fullest presence of yourself, that's where trouble's going to start to happen, right? That's where we start to throw on the expectations, the guilt. Why don't I feel the way that I'm supposed to feel? Why am I not able to do this? And please fear not, if you're just listening to this now, I mean, there's ways that you can start implementing that back and realize. But if it's a situation where the person's totally dependent on you or codependency has formed, know that what you have is a gift and that maybe that isn't the right relationship for you. And that's okay. It's okay.
yeah, and I think the pain of being with someone in addiction, or the pain of being with someone who does not see their potential, the pain of of an abusive relationship, emotionally, physically, all of that. And I may come across wrong for the risk of saying this the wrong way, but I think it's important to say that that pain is really important because it creates contrast. And so the more painful that relationship is, the more painful that situation, that business, the thing not working out, whatever area of life, health, wealth, relationship, connection, whatever, the more painful that is, the more likely you are to go, enough is enough. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to have to focus on me. I'm going to have to become the place of inspiration. I'm going to have to take myself out on a date or whatever the case. I'm going to have to do things differently. And that is also something I'm grateful for what I've gone through. Yeah, I'm curious how that the beginning plays a role, because you do some really incredible things, I think mainly with women, maybe with all, right? I am curious how that plays into what you do now and how you support your tribe.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been a journey of discovering the tools and the resources. And then for me, it's always been what has always felt comfortable to me before I could even name it was to share that with others. You need to, my sister will call and be like, I'm just reading about this and it resonates so bad and, so much with me. And we have very similar backgrounds, you and I just need you hear this. Not saying that you need to put into place, hear me speak this and share. And it's that continuous share. So I think it's also a curiosity to know that I'm continuously evolving, to put myself in situations that could be slightly uncomfortable so I can still see the areas that need to show themselves to work on. I love connecting with my clients, meeting them wherever they are in their journey, whether it be, health or wellness or taking the next right action in their life, right? And we really do that through stepping into the gap and really self identifying. And then it slowly comes, like this beautiful flower that's blooming, what we need to look at and work on, and the journey unravels in itself. And I'm more of a guide. I like to think of a guide back to self with my clients, with whatever shift. We don't get so wrapped up in what's triggered them reaching out, but they have. And that's where we're going to get down to the roots. We don't deal in symptoms. We get down to the roots, and then the symptoms start to clear up on their own. And we talk about that, and we see that so quickly. But that's a lot of the work that I do now. And the journey has fundamentally, I mean, it shaped me for who I am. And this is something that I have to put out there. I can't not. We could meet on the street and the conversation somehow is going to go into, what do you do? And what's this? And then we start talking about it. And then space is open, and a feeling of just openness comes out. People share with me. I share with them. Vulnerability is a superpower. I'm going to continue to be vulnerable in my life because I have a lot of love to give. So,
Yeah, and that's what's creating the connection too. And I love that, and that resonates with me that you are doing. You're living it, you're in it, and then your clients are attracted to you, and they're coming into your field because of what you have gone through, and how. And I think it's important because I feel the same way. I always tell my community, like my students, when they first join, I'm like, yeah, you might want to watch some of the newer things I'm teaching, because in the old stuff, I didn't know this. And if there's something I was wrong where there's an evolution, then it's like, hey, I know I talked about this, but this is what I learned that is new. So we're both in it, living, making the mistakes, learning from them, sharing.
right. Real life.
Yeah, we're alive.
Yeah, we are alive, and we have days. I just told somebody the other day, I was like, I took a day yesterday because it's real life and I needed it. And it's just, you put out so much in your world, to your children, to your spouses, to clients, to anybody. And now we're so overstimulated with all the different outlets that there will be days where I'm like, okay, and I have my days blocked where those are the days that I recharge, because I'm no good to you if I'm not taking care of myself either. And that's what I teach others. But it's always going to be from a place of authenticity, because that's all that I know to give, because this is my life's work. And it's a culmination of my life to date.
Yeah. I love that. That's like my motto for life. There's this quote. I quote it all the time. I wish I knew for sure who was wrong. I think it's from Rumi, but it says, I should look it up. It says, let your life be your message. And when I read that quote, man, I was like, oh, like on the surface, like, yeah, let your life be your message. Or you hear people say, let your mess be your message. Like there's all this different iteration of it. But when I really went 3 layers deep, then I finally got it. I was like, oh, wait a second. I am alive and I'm human and I'm here to live my soul's purpose. And then my soul's purpose in itself is going to be useful to other people. And I don't have to push. But I'm not here to struggle, and I'm not here, and I am here to struggle, experience the pain, but I'm not here to struggle for other people. Like, I mean, this whole perspective shift of going from, again, looking to inspire others versus being in a place of inspiration just by the way that you live and the way that you learn and you move through in life, and the mistakes you make and the pains that you're going through. So I think
Totally.
that's a beautiful thing.
I've reached back out to people, and I've, and chatted with them and this and that. And somebody listening will connect to the two of us for the loss that we had very young and how that shaped, and the loss, in the divorce, or the pain of that, the loss of identity and the crisis. And, I was 30 pounds heavier back then, when I was going through, I had so many imbalances on me that I was carrying through life that it's reflected when you look at pictures of myself from there to now. And stripping that away, as I mentioned, and becoming bare again was the unraveling to the becoming. And I needed that to happen. And I'm not ashamed of any aspect of my life. I'm not ashamed of when I was seeking to find validation in other people and looking to other people to fulfill happiness and this, or where it was just affirmations all day long, whereas because you grew and you learned. And I can say without a doubt in my mind, anything that I share with anybody is, open to their journey, but it's lived. It's been lived by me. It's been practiced by me. It's been honored by me. There's science or studies or, behind it. This is something that I've done a lot of work on and applied, and it has cultivated peace within. So then I can project peace without. And not all the time. Sometimes I sit with my beautiful part of fear and anxiety, and we hold hands, or I hold them, or I throw them on my shoulders mentally, and we walk the day, and we can do that too.
And what a beautiful thing too, because as you get to share this, like I know this to be true about my struggles, is the people that I get to help in my community or clients or just on my personal life, most often they they are in some kind of resonance with what I have experienced before. There's some old version of me before I have had my multiple rebirths. They're the version of me who was in an unhappy marriage and didn't know how to leave. They're the version of me that were burnt out in their business. Like they had a successful life on paper, but they couldn't take the time off, or they were burnt out, they're overworked and they're underpaid. They were the version of me that was the overwhelmed and postpartum depressed mom. They're the version of me, but they're also the versions of me that saw something of a potential in their future, like how I saw my potential in my future when, I shared with you, not to go into the details of it now, because this is about you, it's not about me, but when I was in my dark moment in the closet, parentheses, if you guys want that story, go to Tessa's podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That when I was in the thick of that moment, the thing that got me out of there was, at least momentarily in that moment, was the possibility that something else existed. And so I get to be that possibility for an old version of myself in another human. And I think that's the beautiful thing about living your life as a form of inspiration for other people, and however it resonates. Again, if I look back at anybody that I have had any kind of positive impact, they have had some version of a struggle. They've been some previous version of myself.
And you see that. It goes back to what we mentioned earlier, having that gift and ability because you've gone through so many rebirths of self and honored. There is no shame there. That's one part that I really can sit with the while and we is totally comfortable, because I don't see it that much, because there was never any shame there in self. And maybe I let it go earlier through one of my rebirths, but recognizing that and being able to see with compassion what somebody else is going through and meet them. We meet them there, right? We meet them at that spot. And I think that's probably the gift that we're allowed to give through our coaching, which I love. I love so much.
Yeah. And I know you have so many different things that you offer. I know you've mentioned like working with clients. It sounds like maybe one-on-one. But where's the best place for people to? I know I follow you on Instagram, and I recommend everybody does that. But where's the best place you want people to kind of get going? We'll put all this information in the show notes in case you're driving and you don't want to take notes. It'll be here. You come back to it, click on it, and check it out. But where do people find?
They can just go to tessaarnold.com. That's the best place. I consolidated everything there for you. It will take you to Balance of You if you're interested in the health and wellness and the Ayurvedic, because I'm an Ayurvedic coach. So if they want to go into that, if they want to do group sessions or one-on-ones, they want to see when the book is coming out or the podcast, just go there. Go there for all the things and reach out. Anybody listening, I will always say hi. I love, love, love to connect. It's what makes the world go round. So say hi, reach out, let me know what you like, share. So
Yeah, absolutely. One last question, but really important. Okay. And if it opens up a can of something, it's okay. We have time for that too. And if it doesn't, it's also okay. But what is one decision in your life or one scenario, one scene, one area of your life where you've made an unreasonable decision or action, unreasonable action that has been really life changing for you? Something totally outside the box.
yeah, it's, I've made a couple of them, and it would have to probably stem from my divorce. I think the divorce in itself was not, I don't know if people supported. I was very closed off from a lot of people, and we had, isolated through different things. But then it was moving, my children. It was moving my children back home.
Mhm.
And it was unreasonable in a lot of ways in my own mind, and then what I needed and what I needed to do. And I think since then, I've moved them even since up to a new area now where we could expand and grow. But I think it's really having the willingness to pivot, right? Unreasonably, without having to explain. And people will come, why are you doing this? You shouldn't do this. This is comfortable. You have family here and you have this and that. And sometimes I just say, I know that I need to, and I'm going to do it. And it might seem unreasonable to you, but this is not, this is my life and I'm taking agency over it. And when we need to shift and move, if we've outgrown an environment, if the environment that we're living in, is not safe for us. And I have no problem taking, charge of that. And without knowing what's going to happen, mind you,
Oh, yeah.
you have no idea.
I
So
think that's part of but that's what part of what makes it unreasonable, right? Like most people will
real
make reasonable decisions and take reasonable actions because they know it's secure, it's safe, they know where they're gonna land. But I think a criteria for an unreasonable decision or an unreasonable action is you have no idea where you're gonna land. Are you gonna be safe? Are you gonna break a leg? You don't know.
right. And that's still, somebody was just talking to me earlier this week, and we were talking about a year from now, and I was like, whoa, that's, I move with intentional action with what I do, very much so. And I've learned that through the process of life. I really try to not over process, over analyze, but have an idea of what I want to put out there. And I have slowly and surely been able to not fear the unknown, because it's the known we fear, but to embrace that unknown and to step into it and say, let's paint. Let's paint this beautiful canvas, which it's my life. And I don't know where I'm going to be in a year, but I know it's going to be somewhere that's healthy for my children and I. I know it's going to be somewhere where we're thriving and growing and community. And this is all that I see for myself. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and what a beautiful way to flow through life.
yeah. Exactly. And it could very well be here. I don't want people to think like a jump up and roll, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it's, it have everybody listening. We hold on so tight to an image or an ideal of what things could look like, and we grow attached to them. And it's the pain of the realization of the loss of attachment that you have, right? Maybe you just weren't dreaming big enough, or maybe that wasn't your dream, right? Maybe it was being forced a little bit. So the more that we can let go a little bit from that attachment, and the more that we say, it's like holding sand in your hand or water in your hand, to let it flow and just see what can happen. And I know that's scary to start to put into practice, but try it with just this week, or just today. Maybe don't plan today. You don't know what movie you're going to watch. You don't know what you're making for dinner. And that could feel so chaotic, but, or whatever feels good to you, just try not to plan as much and attach to how things have to look.
There's a funny meme. I'm going to butcher it, but I'm sure you've seen it. It says something like, I go with the flow, but just tell me what time it begins and where do we show up and what should we wear in what situation. I mean, what a beautiful thing. The art of surrender. Like I actually have a tattoo that says trust on my wrist to remind me to trust the unknown, to remind me while I have really big goals and things that I'd like to experience in life, but also even within that to expand it and be okay with, something bigger, something better, something more beautiful, something different that is going to. So that trust and surrender is definitely going to be key in living an unreasonably juicy life.
Yes, I love it.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much, Tessa, for coming on here. I can't believe how many similarities we have in our stories. Like make an Excel sheet. We've got
I know, right? Well, it's I don't believe in coincidences, so none at all that we connected. And I know that there's probably so many people listening to who just resonate with it, whether it's things get so uncomfortable that you have to change, or loss, or understanding, or what we see in other people. So it's beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tessa. Thank you for everybody who's watching or listening to this. Make sure that you subscribe, reach out to Tessa, connect with me. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you again. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into the Unreasonable Life podcast. I hope that today's episode has inspired you to dream bigger, act bolder, and step into your own version of an unreasonable dream life. If you loved what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to take their next bold leap. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram and share your biggest takeaways from today's episode. And remember, the life that you want isn't unreachable. It's just unreasonable. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Unreasonable Life podcast.